I'll call this meeting the special meeting of the budget study session for Wednesday, May 17th, 2017 at 6:30 p.m. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance led by Mayor Pro Tem Spence. May we have a roll call, please?
Councilman Johnson?
Here.
Councilmember Toma?
Here.
Councilman Wu?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Spence?
Here.
Mayor Warshaw?
Here. And there are no changes to the agenda, is that correct?
That is correct.
Thank you. We will start then with public comments on any items on the agenda. I have a few cards, but if you'd like to speak, please fill out a yellow card that you'll find right outside the council chamber. Oh, we've got them actually right up front. And give it to our assistant city clerk. Our first speaker will be Chris Miller.
Thank you for inviting the residents of West Covina in the process of the budget and being transparent. I look forward to analyze and watch the outcome of the budgetary process. I urge residents of West Covina to be familiar with the website Transparent California. What is other pay, other compensation, other than vacation time? Who determines what it is, how much is paid, and who approves it? On vacation time, I would suggest that no more than 6 weeks be accrued and saved, and mandatory payout or yearly anniversary of hire any amount over 6 weeks. That way the city budget will not be hit by someone retiring, and no real effect on salary spiking on retirement. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker will be Phil Moreno.
Members of the City Council, members of the staff, members of the audience. I have here an email attached to an article regarding pay raises given in the city. The email, and I have a list of that many people on my email string, and I started it when we had to go and determine that our city had financial troubles before any of you were elected. These are the shakers and movers in the city. These are the people that are concerned about our finances. And this is what Steve Millard wrote. The first part of the headline for the following article gives the false impression that the city has finally made a substantial inroad into the amount of unfunded liability to which the city is currently committed. And the comments by the city manager are even more misleading. A more objective assessment would be that the amount of the city's unfunded liability will continue to grow. And the city gave away more of your hard-earned tax dollars for compensation and quotations, including more than $500,000 to cover some of what were retroactive in the process. Special attention is directed to the following quote by city manager. Freeland said, "It didn't look like the city would need to cut any services to make up for the more than $500,000 needed to pay the retroactive pay raises." So here's the article. And here is what you got from this staff today as far as a budget. It is recommended that the City Council provide city staff direction on various city priorities related to the fiscal 2017 and 18 operating and capital improvement program. The article that I alluded to is dated 1/18 of 17. The staff report says on January 31st, what's that, a week later? Maybe 2 weeks later? The Finance Department held a fiscal year budget kickoff meeting with the City of West Covina staff to begin the development of a budget. Are you telling me that this man and this finance director didn't know you had a $5 million, possibly a $6 million hole? How is that possible? In a company, you're the board of directors, and the board of directors give direction to the chief operating officer. If you're making widgets and he tells you we're making them, but we're $6 million in the hole, you go bankrupt. There is no company that can spend more money than its revenue. And you knew that. Every one of your flyers said, I know my city has financial problems. If you elect me, I will fix it. I made a phone call. The unfunded liability for the West Covina School District is $9 million. Same residents. The unfunded liability in the last CAFR is $147 million for the city of West Covina. And PERS has an anticipated investment return of 7.5%. Last year it made 0.061. You're going to get hit every year. This year, you're going to have to make up the money that the investment fund didn't make. That's 6%. If they don't make 7% next year, that means you have to make up 13%. You can't spend more money. My wife and I, we may want to drive a Bentley and a Rolls, but we live within our means. I asked Mike Love from the school district, Mike, whenever something is brought in front of you, you have a budget? He said, yeah. Does the staff tell you if the spending they're recommending is within the budget or not? He said, yes. Why doesn't this staff do that? How did you said you had a balanced budget last year. You don't get $6 million in the hole in 1 year. And this city needs to change direction. You need a conservative city manager, and you don't have one. It's time to change city managers. The taxpayers are fed up with what we thought we had before. We thought you were the answer. You're not. Please, get this city to spend within its means, or else we have to claim bankruptcy. There's no other out. You do not take money for road taxes to put flowers and bushes on Glendora Avenue, yet that's what the staff's recommending. What do you want to do, go up Grand Avenue in our city? Have you been up Grand? You're driving through potholes. You're going to take away money from fixing the roads to put up flowers and trees? That's the misdirection you're getting. I'm sorry. Sometimes I am the bearer of bad news. But Mr. Freeland, time to change.
Our next speaker is Eric Melnick.
Good evening. Eric Melnick from the West Covina Police Officers Association. I'm the president. After looking at the proposed cuts to the police department, which total $1.6 million, I felt it necessary to come up and maybe warn you a little bit about the possible ramifications of that. As we all know, just from watching the news, the uptick in violence last year and even this year has been astronomical. Last year, 67 officers across the country were violently murdered, 21 of which were ambushed. 11 of the 67 were from California. So far this year, we've had 20 violent deaths of law enforcement officers, which in the same time period last year was 18. So we're already on the rise. Just to bring it a little bit more local, from August 2012 until November of 2014, we had 0 officers involved in shootings. Since November 2014 to present, 13. Myself included and a couple of the people you see sitting here. Most of the time, the vast majority of the time actually, we were able to prevail in those situations because you have good cops. They were good. Sometimes, I'm sorry, I'm a little nervous, I'm shaking a little bit. Sometimes we were lucky and good. One of the guys who's here right now, who was lucky and good, Kenny Benitez, you know his name. I don't know if you've seen his face though. Almost a year ago to the day, Kenny was patrolling not 1.5 miles from where we sit and stand right now. Went out to contact a suspect who was doing some shady stuff. Guy runs, Kenny gives chase, unprovoked, the guy turns around and just opens fire on him. Because of Kenny's background in the military and his background as a police officer, a veteran police officer, he was able to continue the fight and win that fight ultimately. Now that person is awaiting trial. September 11th, 2015, about 1/4 mile from where we stand right now, CHP Officer Felix Serpis in the parking lot of the Hustler Hollywood. He and his partner make a traffic stop, violently attacked by a man wielding a shotgun. This is happening in our city. AB 109, Prop 47, Prop 57, you hear about it all the time. It's making things worse. This is not the right time to make cuts to the police department. I understand cuts have to be made, but I've never seen a public works official name on a memorial wall. I've never seen anybody die because the grass at the park was not green enough. We need to make cuts, yes, but what exactly are we cutting? The SRO program now. 3 SROs, halfway funded by the school districts. Those kids' last line of defense, and we all know about the mass shootings going on. I warn you because your legacy will be based on those kinds of events happening if these cuts can be tied to the deaths of school kids or to the deaths of police officers. That will be your legacy. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Pat Benchop.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council, Mr. City Manager, city staff, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Pat Benchop, and I'm representing the West Covina Police Management Association today. This evening, I'm here to ask you to spare the police department from another round of debilitating personnel cuts. In about 2010, the city once again found itself in financial turmoil, and the police department was cut from 127 officers to 87. 127 to 87. Reduction in police officer staffing is a very dangerous solution to solve budgetary problems. As Eric stated, violence upon members of our community and police officers, not just our community, nationwide, is at an all-time high. Gentlemen, ladies, we're following a national trend. Eric pointed out 2 officers that were shot in West Covina in attempted assassinations on their life for merely doing their job. You've seen Kenny Benitez, but I'm going to say his name again. Kenny Benitez is one of us, okay? So Officer Serpis, he's a CHP officer doing a job in West Covina, keeping our people safe. 200 yards away, a mile and a half away from where we sit today. West Covina is not immune from rising crime trends. Cutting police staffing during these challenging times creates unnecessary risk to our community and obviously places absolutely unreasonable demands upon our police officers. As your police, we swore to protect the lives and property of the good people that live, work, and play in West Covina. None of us here that work for West Covina became police officers with the intent of solving complex municipal budget problems. None of us became police officers to seek out innovative revenue streams, but yet here we are. Please know that we are willing to help the city with finding solutions to achieve a sustainable budget. Personnel cuts is not it. Period, end of story. What that solution may be is not yet clear. However, what is clear is that balancing a budget by again removing police officer positions is wrong. When making your decision, I ask you to think about the consequences that removing police from our neighborhoods will bring. I ask you to consider the young lady who was awakened in the middle of the night by a predator forcibly entering her home. I ask you to consider the family that was being devastated by domestic violence in need of immediate assistance to stop the brutality. I ask you to consider the business owner who was confronted by an armed man in a ski mask pointing a gun at his face during an armed robbery. These are all calls for help that your police, West Covina Police, have handled recently. I can promise you that none of these victims were thinking about the massive 4th of July event. None of these victims were thinking about the costs associated with IT infrastructure. None of them. Their lives were in danger. They called 911. They wanted police. They wanted help, and they deserve both. I ask you to consider your obligation and your individual promises that you made to keep West Covina safe. All of us took that oath, gentlemen, all of us. Today, on the way in, I looked at the city's Facebook page. Yesterday, the city posted our police memorial. It sits in front of the station. That memorial holds the name of 3 brave officers who made the ultimate sacrifice in defense of the city and community and members of West Covina. It said something like, We honor the men who made the ultimate sacrifice. I'm here to assure you, the only way to properly honor those men is to make sure our fourth name does not join them on that wall. I'll leave you with this. Quote from Gordon Graham, "Predictable is preventable." You have a choice to make. There's an obvious choice not to make. I wish you the luck. And I tell you this, I am here, and my group is here, and the PD is here to help you and be a resource to you. All you need to do is ask. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Jerry Patras.
Jerry Patras, West Covina resident. We all seem to know that I worked in the public sector, and I'm used to going through these times. They're not easy, and I'm not going to say they are. You have to make hard decisions. Where I'm really struggling is we seem to be going along just fine, then all of a sudden we have this big deficit pop up, and that's a concern. Crime is up, and the police are getting hit this much. Please cut back on the blasted consultant use. That should happen before any of the police officers are affected. I really understand the use of consultants. There is a role for them, but they should not be doing the job of a department head at a council meeting, and that's what it looks like. I think you can cut back a good 10% of the use of consultants before you hit the police to the degree that you are. If there's vacant positions, don't eliminate them, defund them if they're funded, but they should stay on the books. I kept coming to council meetings hearing how we're building up our police force, and now this? It makes no sense. The optics are really bad. The school resource officer program just basically started, and now it's hit. That's bad planning, please. I do believe in user fees. I know it's unpopular, but I do think lighting fees for groups should really be there. It's not realistic anymore to have too much freebies. There should be something. I don't know what it should be. Other cities are doing it. But I really and truthfully am concerned about how we got here, where a few months ago everything seemed fine. Please don't prioritize the police this way. Hit the consultants, hit some street. I'll drive over a pothole before I want to see the police hit. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Ed, I think it's Dorr.
Good evening, and thanks for having me. A lot of the men and women sitting around me here with what they do for a living in protecting us, both in fire and defense and police. I represent the West Covina Youth Football Program. We are the West Covina Bruins, 52 years in the making. I have to tell you that I would not want to take a dollar from these folks at the sake of our people, but I think, like this young lady mentioned, I think there's things that could be done, should be done, maybe postponed. $150,000 for the sports teams in this organization. I don't know how we do that. I mean, I really don't know how we do that. I see many of these faces that show up at our events, kickoffs and stuff like that. It is those youth programs that keep people playing, keep them off the streets, maybe help these folks' lives maybe a little easier and less complicated. We understand the usage program, but I'm telling you, when we're putting about 10% of kids that we're funding to play in the program that don't have to pay, it makes it very, very, very difficult. So I, for one, would love to go over a pothole. I would go without seeing a flower. I'm in the consulting business, and I would go without doing consultants. But I don't think that taking these kids' programs and adding to the fee, I don't know how we do that. I mean, I really don't. We have over about 250 kids that played in that program last year, both in cheer and football, and their families. We're football. There's a couple of soccer programs. There's about 4 or 5 baseball programs, and I think we all find ourselves in the same kind of boat. I don't even know how you divide $150,000 between you know, these groups, but any way you slice it, if there's 5 of us, $30,000 apiece, I don't know how we afford that. And that's a real challenge. So I would ask that you give some consideration to some programs that perhaps may inconvenience us as we drive around or visibility-wise, but certainly from a fire and protection and youth program, I would implore you to please think hard about that. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. I have no other speaker cards. Is there anyone else wishing to speak? JD, if you'll come up and speak and then fill out a yellow card afterward.
Good evening. I'm going to take this in a little different direction. The last 2 visits, the forum changed a bit, so it kind of threw a curve at me. But last 2 times I've attended, we were given a list of projected savings, and each of those savings seemed to come with a fee. Whether it was dog catching, Athens competitors, it was always associated with the fee. And at our last meeting, there was a resident that proposed that cutbacks in police staff and fire department staffing with a proposal for a utility tax. If not passed, we don't get our police and fire back. If passed, we get them back. Seems absolutely crazy. But it seems to be the direction that this council wants to go in, increasing fees and getting a proposal for a tax increase to the residents of West Covina. And I think that's the wrong direction. I think maybe council should consider creating some incentives for business to those that are existing, and maybe bring some new business into West Covina, some new blood with reduction in fees, reduction in taxes. I know in the ears of some that may sound like voodoo economics, you know, Reaganomics, but it works. It's worked in the past, and it will work again. This may be anathema considering the number of police that we have here, but I like to see a comparison and contrast and maybe a cost analysis of what we would get with county versus city police. That's like taboo to mention, but I want to throw it out there because that hasn't been discussed, at least not publicly to my ears. So I think that would be interesting to know. We seem to have an ongoing fight or struggle with staffing in the police department. Are there any other options? Is the county an option, a viable option? Council, explore that possibility. Don't shy, don't fear from the union and the police. After all, they're our employees. We're the taxpayers. So from a resident's perspective, I like to see those possibilities discussed and placed on the table for consideration. I did have something else I wanted to mention here. Got 2 minutes and 20 seconds, so I'm going to hold you in suspense. Maybe all 2 minutes and 20 seconds. I guess not. It was basically the incentive piece of what I like to see as an approach to possible solution to our economic problems. Other possibilities for the Department of Police, and this sense that I'm picking up as a resident that there's this move for digging back into the pockets of the residents to try to solve the problems that you created. Not necessarily this council, but this and other councils. And it's because you're not wanting to think out of the box. You keep trying the same old tired methods that fail time and time again and keep digging us deeper into a hole. If you think you're going to get a different result, I think somebody said that's probably a sign of lunacy, so you may want to reconsider. Thank you. You want me to fill out a card, right?
Yes, thank you. With that, I will close the public comment, and we will move to the actual part of the study session. Who is going to present that?
Our finance director will, but before we do, just to give everybody a little bit of a background of how we've gotten here today. As it's stated in the staff report, the staff began having budget meetings on January 31st, 2017, is our annual budget kickoff. During that time, departments were asked to put together their budgets for the forthcoming year. Since that time, staff has worked closely with one another and presented to the City Council and the public at 2 different workshops a variety of scenarios. So at April 19th, 2017, we held our first budget study session. At there, as City Council and those who were in attendance will recall, we started with the budget situation with about a $6.1 million deficit, and there's a combination of things that have got us to that position. For the last couple of years, each year the city has depended on about a 3% managed savings in all the different departments. What that means is that typically each department will have some vacancies throughout the course of the year, and through retirements, through attrition, whatever it may be, and so we let the departments manage their budgets as long as they generated those 3% savings. Unfortunately, 1 or 2 of the departments have been unable to maintain that, and so that's part of why we are trying to reduce the budget this year rather than have that managed savings on the different departments. That generates about $1.5 million this current fiscal year that we're looking at. In addition, no surprise, has been the PERS increases, and that is projected this year of an increase of $1.8 million to the city. One of the surprises has been is the absorption of the SAFER grant positions. We knew the SAFER grant was going away. We weren't sure of how many of those positions would be going, but that's causing the city to incur an additional $1.2 million in our fire department this year. And then in addition, we have increased costs for personnel, supplies of about $1.6 million. That's just the cost of doing business here in the city. Yes, some of it has been for salary increases, and but also includes everything from increases for janitorial services, tree trimming, and a variety of services that are paid from out of the general fund. Over the course of the last couple of meetings, that budget deficit or gap has gone down after the first meeting down to about $5.2 million, after the May 17th meeting with $4.2 million, and based on the comments from the public that meeting, as well as some of the discussions to go back and ask the departments what a 5% cut would look like, we're presenting that to the City Council for consideration tonight to give us direction. I want to make sure everybody understands tonight is not the budget adoption. This is to get some direction from the City Council to City staff on what areas they wish to look at revenue enhancements as well as expenditure cuts. From that direction, the city will go back and work with the departments to identify what else needs to be done to close the gap here on our city's general fund budget. Some of the comments made this evening talk about, you know, I'd rather drive over a pothole or not worry about cutting the police department. I would agree with that wholeheartedly, but you can't use transportation dollars to fund police officers or firefighters here in the community. Those monies must be used for transportation-related programs. The city's funds with regards to transportation are doing actually pretty well right now, because whether you support it or not, we've had 2 additional actions here in California to increase about $3 million per year in new transportation funds once it's fully functional. That's Measure M, which is the new half-cent sales tax that the County of Los Angeles adopted, and then the state increase on, was it Senate Bill 1, and the gas tax increase of about 12 cents per gallon, as well as other registration. And those funds are only to be used for street projects. Some of Public Works staff is able to be offset by those costs, and you'll see in this budget that we've actually reduced some of the general fund liability from Public Works by transferring some of those costs onto those new transportation funds. Tonight, we're going to ask our finance director to go over a brief PowerPoint. Some of this will be repetition, as it talks about a little bit of the fund history here, talks about our revenues, talks about the fact that we do have revenues are pretty much expect to be flat this year in property and sales tax, which is our main sources of revenues. So with that, I'll turn it over to Krista to give us a review, and then we'll have some further discussion, I'm sure.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members, members of the public. Tonight, I will try to be brief and get through the PowerPoint for the budget study session. So the City Council has adopted a fund balance policy to maintain a 20% reserve for things of economic crisis or emergency situations. And the priority is to close this general fund operating gap. We've suggested ways to seek new revenue opportunities and reduce expenditures that unfortunately would have impacts on service. The other option would be to use that fund balance reserve to help close the gap. So this is a citywide comparison, just showing the last couple years how revenues used to outpace expenditures, but that has slowly been transitioning. This is all of the city funds, the revenues by fund type. We have 123 million. Of that, 50% is the general fund. Then we have our total expenditures by fund. Right now, we are planning 118 million, and of that, 56% is from the general fund. This shows total expenditures by category, the same 118 million, and it shows that salaries and benefits are 51% of that, maintenance and operations 26%, we have 13%, which is debt service, and 9% is capital projects. This is just the general fund comparison over the last few years. The blue is revenues and the red is expenditures. So here again, you see how revenues used to exceed expenditures, and that story is now changing. So this is our general fund revenues broken out by type. We are projecting almost 62 million in general fund revenues. Of that, almost 39% is property taxes and 27% is sales tax. And then the others make up the rest. So this is about 10-year history of the property taxes. They do continue to slowly increase, but it's not enough to keep us on track. This is our sales tax history. The spike that you see in 15-16 was a one-time catch-up payment from the triple flip, the monies that were withheld by the state in the past. And you can see in 16-17 and 17-18, they're starting to plateau. The big concern that I have with this is these typically follow a bell curve. So they usually go up and down and up and down. So it's starting to flatten. General fund expenditures are projected at 67 million. Of that, 75% is for public safety. So this is the general fund balance right now with that $4.2 million operating deficit. And that if we adopt the budget at this level, we reduce our fund balance reserve to 13%. The main goal here is that you want to have your operating revenues cover your operating expenditures. So this is the slide that kind of summarizes what the city manager talked about. How did we get to this $6.1 million budget deficit? The managed salary savings that had been there in the past, the 1.5, 1.8 in PERS increases, the safer positions now coming into the general fund is 1.2, and the various increased costs, CIP personnel costs, 1.6. So the challenges that we face are maintaining the current level of service, retention of police officer positions. There's talks of expansion of EMS services, updating park equipment and playing fields, the aging infrastructure and vehicles that we have at the city, the potential loss of CDBG funding for programs, and the OPEB liability that is not funded. So we had put this together, just a comparison of the blue is our property tax and sales tax revenues compared to our police and fire expenditures, just to kind of show that those two major revenue sources do not cover that 75% of our general fund costs. So we started off with the 6.1 million, and at the first meeting, we reduced it to 5.2. And then it's at 4.2 right now. The revenue enhancement options that we're asking council to make decisions on are 1.2 million, and the expenditure cuts before you tonight are 1.7 million. If all of those are approved, that puts our deficit at 1.2 million. So this is what fund balance would look like if all of those items are approved. It would, like I said, reduce our operating deficit to almost 1.3 and bring our fund balance reserve to almost 18%. So we still have about 1.1 million that we would need to cut in order to get our fund balance reserve and keep it at that 20%. So these are the revenue enhancement options that are being presented. The Athens annual contribution of $300,000, crossing guard shared costs with the school districts, $90,000, charging the sports groups for field lighting, projected at $150,000. The street sweeping costs, if we put that as a fee, that would be $490,000 that's saved. And if we implement a dog license canvassing program, that is anticipated to bring in $200,000. The expenditure cuts being proposed, if we were, in 16-17, we tried to implement a vehicle replacement fund. And so if we removed the suggested amount this year, that would be a savings of $253,000. If we eliminated the aquatics program, it's about $41,000. If we eliminate special events, that would be $31,000 in savings. If we eliminate non-essential travel and training, that would be $96,000 across all departments. If we cut the commission and treasurer budgets, it's almost $7,000 in savings. If City Council cuts their allowances to $1,500 each, that would save $16,000. We have the following vacant positions that if we eliminated, like the finance account clerk, that would save $69,000. The planning associate would save $56,000. And the 5 police officer vacancies, that would save $790,000. If we downgrade the fire marshal to a fire protection specialist, that would save $71,000. And if we downgrade the deputy city clerk to 2 part-time positions, that would be a $50,000 savings. And eliminating the school resource officer program would save $237,000, which gets us to 1.7 in expenditure cuts. This is a look at the capital improvement program as it is proposed right now. Glendora Avenue, the anticipation of spending $5 million the first year. I just want to remind that this was a city council SMART goal. It was actually number 9 on those goals, and that's why staff has been bringing this forward. The Azusa Avenue street rehabilitation would be $1 million. Residential street rehab, $1 million. Drought tolerant landscaping at $700,000. Sewer projects, $440,000. New ambulance at $214,000. Concrete repairs for $200,000, and flashing beacons at $150,000. So we can take any questions that you might have at this time, but the recommendation is to provide direction on all of those items that I mentioned.
Are there any questions from council? I have one question. The capital improvement projects, if you'll put that slide back up there, is that through general fund money?
All of these large ones are not general funded, no.
Right. So this doesn't help us with our expenses being so high because it's not coming from general fund money. Thank you.
Question would be is how much of our capital improvement budget does come out of the general fund?
So
what are those things?
We have $130,000 budgeted in the general funds capital project fund. The replacement of the fire department self-contained breathing apparatus masks at $80,000 and catch basin trash device installation program at $50,000.
Okay, so 130,000 is in general fund. Okay.
Yeah. You have no question? Yeah. Okay. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm a little, I guess, confused about the format that was decided on for tonight, because I've been involved in cutting budgets a lot, actually, over the years. And, you know, we're just getting a few slides of different stats organized, and we're not getting information that I think is valuable. You know, how much of our public safety budget is not funded by the general fund? I mean, you put up a slide comparing the sales tax and the property taxes, you know, and then you put up a slide of the public safety budget. How much of the public safety budget is funded out of special funds? Because it'd be much more accurate to say that, it would be a much more accurate slide if I had that number.
And if you give us a couple minutes, I'm sure staff can provide that information.
Because like
But
I know
it's
that
very little that they actually,
Well, I know like the two officers that were authorized for the bike patrols coming out of a special fund, right? And so, I mean, I know there's special funds that fund our public safety. So I just want to see how close that is once that's figured out.
okay.
Where are my other ones? You know, the managed, you know, one of the reasons the 1.5 million, the 3% reduction, is that going to go back in? We took it out. You guys took it out when you presented the budget, the 3% savings that we had asked all departments to do, right? And you said some departments weren't able to do that?
That is correct.
Which ones weren't able to do that?
I think at this time we're still waiting on the police department because they have several opening positions. But right now it's been the fire department, I think some in public works.
Okay. And what's the issue in the public works that's done?
Again, this year is based on the, I'll let Krista better describe it, it's the coding of the payroll now that we're going instead of percentage based on actual hours worked. So maybe Krista can explain that a little bit better.
That was an audit finding that we had, and that was something that this 16-17 budget, it was, I guess you could say, a test. You know, we weren't 100% sure how those costs were going to lay out. So
Right.
It was a budget, it was a plan. So we switched to actual time being recorded, and we ended up finding that, you know, it differed from what we had originally anticipated. So that's just more that is having to be absorbed by the general fund, because they might be working in areas that's where the need is. It's in a general funded area. If there are issues and things that they need to resolve that aren't in a maintenance district or aren't particularly gas tax eligible, they have to charge that to the general fund. It's not just a percentage, a plan that we do. We have to do actual time now.
Right, and no, I understand that, but I guess what I'm getting at is I'd like to know what percentage of departments like Public Works and all those are funded by the general fund rather than dedicated revenue streams that we have, whether it's all the tax and fee stuff and all that kind of stuff. Because we're talking about the general fund as being the hit. And so I need to see those numbers in a lot of these areas to see, okay, well, what's the story in Public Works? How much of this money is in the Public Works Department's general fund money? And, you know, what's that being spent on and why? And is that valuable to us over other things so we can prioritize? Because with the numbers I have here, I can't really prioritize our spending, because you're asking us to go ahead and eliminate vacant positions, which is nice, because it doesn't involve anybody that currently has a job. But that may not be what our priorities are. And so I need to see, like, how much does the general fund of all our different departments, you know, is being taken from the general fund. Sorry, how much of the general fund is being spent in those individual departments and what it's being spent on?
I have some information about public safety. So 100% of the fire department is general funded, and 96% of the police department is general funded. So we have $700,000, that's the Public Safety Augmentation Fund that funds some police officer positions. And then the recently adopted TRAP money is about $357,000. And then the city law enforcement grant, which is $250,000 over 2 years. But 96% of the police department is budgeted in the general fund.
That doesn't sound right.
So
sound right.
when I look at the general fund
That's not right.
expenditure slide that shows the 6 to 7 million up there, and I see police at 31,300,561, that So there's another 700,000 on top of that you're talking about that isn't general fund. Is that correct?
And now the trap and the grant that they
Right.
got.
And what about the school resource officers, the money that's partially being paid by the schools?
Oh, we're just looking at budgeted expenditures, so that would be revenue we'd have to add back to offset that. We can look that up to get you, I mean,
Okay, so those revenues, like fire inspection fees, those kind of things aren't already budgeted back in and those kinds of things?
Those are budgeted into the city's general fund. They're not budgeted into each department.
Right.
Okay, but why is it the school district, I mean, 100% of our costs, I mean.
No,
is that
50%.
50%.
Right, so on the request to review the elimination of the SRO program is 237,000, so there should be a corresponding revenue equal to that as well, because we pay
Right.
half, they pay half, and we pay half. Mm-hmm. Yes.
But I'd like to see how much the general fund's spending in all our different departments.
It's on the slide, I believe, above it.
No, like how much of it is being, how much of planning is being spent out of the general fund? How much of public works is being spent out of the general fund?
Those are the numbers up above.
Okay, and what are those things for? So we can prioritize whether we want to do those or not.
Okay, we can bring back at a next meeting a list of how every dollar is spent on the different programs.
Yeah, I mean, because I mean, it seems to me there's general fund money that's going to some of our other departments, and we need to make a decision where we want to spend it.
Okay. If that's what the council wishes, I know the direction the council has been providing to city staff is to look at ways not to incur any layoffs in any of the positions.
And when did we do that? When did we give that? Because we've had 2 town halls or 2 budget workshops that we did not participate in as council members giving direction. So when did we give direction to you to do that?
As we've had discussions about labor issues in closed session.
Really? Okay.
But if the council wishes to, we'll be more than happy to put a list of all the positions and expenditures for each department.
Mm-hmm. I would like to see that.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's not a question, it's more like a comment, okay, yeah. I really have a problem with your budget, okay? And the thing is this, okay, now we have this $6 million deficit. So the core issue is this: is this budget credible? Is this budget really genuine? Is this a mistake created by our directors of the treasurers, okay? And I really have a problem with this budget at all. Okay, we, on the public concept, including myself, 2016, 2017, we're doing very good West Covina. Okay, we have a house, $1 million home sell like crazy. It's all sold. Okay, and we have a lake. Okay, we have a lake colony. Okay, it's basically have all the property, okay, lease and and properties to generate our property taxes. And then we have Lock Island. We have all the project. So property tax, we get what? 25% of all this, okay, to us. Okay, I check on Google already. We get 25%, 45% go to school, and the rest go to the county. Okay, and then sales tax. Sales tax we have went up 5.2%. Okay, county only went up 1.2. So we are doing pretty good in West Covina. How can we, in this good time, and it's rosy, and suddenly, boom, we have a $60 million budget, okay, deficit. You say you have $1 or $2 million, I might can agree, but $6 million budget deficit is just too big for me to believe. If I'm a business owner, who is suddenly coming in, I have to sit in this, okay, and decide to cut. I'm not going to cut anything here. I have this budget is really genuine, okay, and credible. So I will call for another third party to check about her number. I really have a problem with her number, okay? The number is, how can this number with so big difference from the beginning of last year? Beginning of last year, the budget, okay, basically is everything's okay. And the end of last year, then we have $6 million in the meeting you told us. And this year, then we have all these things happen with such a short time. I really don't know what this number, I know you give us all these graphics, some very convincing, but I really want to see the detail. I'm not an auditor. So let's get an auditor, third party to see if this is a number get misplaced, okay? In that way, if we have to do anything to those, okay, and cut or anything, I think everybody will agree, including myself. We're really spending more than we make. Okay, and I agree, okay, if we doing that as a business, okay, we just have to cut this and that, and then we have to tighten the belt. Tighten the belt is not only to go to the public safety or council this thing, we don't even spend a couple $100 last year. So all this saving is bogus because we didn't use it. So this is not even a saving, it's just symbolic. Then how about, let's have a 20% cut. Okay, away, okay, all the management, including you, including everybody. I know she's leaving next week, but everybody, okay, basically get a 20% cut. In that way, everybody share the same burden what we have right now. That is more convincing to say we have to lay off some people. So in that way, I cannot agree to cut anybody, including the public safety tonight. Thank you.
If you would go back to the slide that shows our revenues for the last few years. Was that the beginning? No. The one that shows, I think the big thing is we got a one-time increase in sales tax revenue right there. So Councilman Wu, if you take a look at this slide, you'll see in 2016, we got a big bump in sales tax. It was a one-time thing. And if you'll see, even with that 5.2% increase,
Mr. Mayor,
it dropped
okay, thank you so much.
to
You may be a wise guy.
1.68 million.
I'm not talking to you, I'm talking to the staff.
I'm talking to
okay,
you,
but anyway,
and I'm answering
I
your question.
I don't believe this number unless we have auditor to check our numbers.
And you want to
Otherwise, I'm not
spend
going to believe
another,
this.
you want to spend another few $100,000 on another audit that we already have those figures.
If we have a genuine numbers, then it's okay. Okay, I don't mind. Maybe we have a couple $1 million, okay, saving, hiding someplace. Okay, one thing is this, I want a credible number rather than this number showing to us with the beautiful numbers. Same thing my sales pitch. My sales pitch, I give to all my sellers, okay, a beautiful graphic. I don't even know what the heck is that.
All right, let me try to
the thing is
respond to
this,
this.
okay, the point is this, I want genuine number with a third party to make sure we have that deficit. Otherwise, okay, I think this is bogus.
Okay, well, let me try to explain to this that the numbers you've seen have already been provided to you by a third party. This is done by HDL, the financial consultant for the community and other cities, that told us that this is what you should be budgeting for your sales tax for the coming year, and this is how much you should be budgeting on your property tax for the coming year. Those items have been shared with the City Council as HDL provides those reports to us. We'll be more than happy to generate them again, but they have already come from a third party.
You know, I think, well, I know Mr. Wu and we didn't vote for the budget last year because at that meeting. But I guess the problem that I'm having is that it seems odd to me that we would be making recommendations to spend money during the course of the year if we were missing our targets. That's one thing. And I have an example of that, you know, our graffiti contractor got canceled. And then we changed the whole criteria, you know, on how to do graffiti contracts, and we only got one bid back that was super high, and then we decided to bring it in-house for about twice as much as what we had budgeted for with a contractor with whatever standard that was that we changed, and you know, and put people on the payroll, including Percival employees that are just going to add to our long-term liability. And so, you know, that doesn't make sense to me. So, you know, there's $200,000 of savings there if we go ahead and we rebid the graffiti contract like we had the first time rather than changing it all and making it very difficult for someone to bid, where all these graffiti contractors, no one wanted to bid, only one did, and it was super high. And, you know, there's $200,000 worth of savings if we were to go back out to bid for around the amount that we had gotten bids before, and with no Percival employees.
How much are we currently spending on graffiti?
I don't think we can tell now that we have it spread all over the place.
No, we have a way to keep track of that. That'll be part of the list if you wish to see something.
I would.
But it is for 2 personnel.
There you go.
Give Serena in a quick second, she can bring that up, actually.
It's not 200,000 savings, you'd have to get rid of the whole program. We're only spending
What for spending? No, I think we're spending more than 200.
The graffiti is budgeted at $138,000 for 17-18.
Okay, and we're paying two employees $138,000? Really?
That's out of the general fund. There's actually, it's also charged to,
There's also about almost $60,000 in supply costs. It's all.
And that we did not pay when we had the contract, because the contractor paid that, right? Or do we do this?
I'd have to ask Chino to come down. I'm not sure if there's any,
It was included.
if there's any, was it included, all the painting that was on the contract? And then I would,
Yeah.
if that's, Chino,
And there's a
can you
couple
confirm that?
$100,000
We,
if we just change that back. Well, actually, I think there would be, because we're having more than 2 employees do it, and they're all personable too. That's the other thing.
The question was on the graffiti contract, previous contractor, did they provide all the supplies, or did we have to provide any?
They did provide the supplies.
There we go.
On that issue, because this came up when it was an agenda item, we were required by law to change the bidding process, right? Because they had to be permitted or licensed for the particular kind of work that they were doing. So the first time, we couldn't do it the same way the first time. The one bid we got was more expensive than what we paid out to go in-house. The reason why we had to change contractors is because our contractor became very ill and just could not fulfill the contract, and we were going a week or more without having any of the work done. We had to hire an interim company, from my recollection, who was doing it, and there were problems with that too, because the interim contractor, who, I don't know if they were interested in doing it long-term, but there were problems with that. So in comparison to the bid that we got, this was a savings in terms of going in-house. So we couldn't have done it the old way.
Actually, I disagree with the assumption that we had to do it for legal reasons. You know, we never had that discussion. That was something that was just done by staff without consulting the council. And so other cities don't do it that way. And so, you know, I think sometimes, you know, our city attorney, she's not here, but I know I've said this before, it's just because she has an opinion, that doesn't mean it becomes policy. Otherwise, they don't need a city council to adopt policy. So, you know, we need to have those kinds of discussions because it hits our bottom line. And that's just one example. I'd like to see all that brought back so we can see those numbers. But, you know, I think the problem I'm having is I don't believe once in closed session I ever heard a discussion about our budget being talked about here under the guise of negotiations, because we can't make decisions like that in closed session. And so I think staff has not had direction from the city council on what to do through this whole process, and you know, or they're getting it from somewhere else or from some people. But, you know, I think we should give direction to the city council, to the staff, to come back with numbers about everything where the general fund spent, and then also to prioritize that we want to protect public safety, we want to protect cops, we want to protect fire, and then we can go from there and see how much money there is. Because I actually think JD is right in a lot of ways, and I think government, not just the city, but all governments do this. They love to talk about cutting police and fire so they can get people to vote for taxes. They never put the stuff that people don't like on the ballot, you know, for taxes. They don't do that.
Is that motion?
Yeah, well, that's what I'd like to give direction to.
I second.
So, yeah. So the direction is to have staff come back with numbers on all our expenditures of general fund that aren't public safety, and so we can prioritize what that money is spent on.
I'd like to amend that to include public safety. We're spending 75% of our general fund on police and fire.
Well, we can. I don't have a problem bringing back the numbers. I don't have a problem bringing back those numbers. Okay. You know, for me, public safety is probably the first purpose of government is to provide for the.
And it definitely is, but we cannot continue to spend 75% of our general fund on public safety. As you've seen what's happened with PERS, and it was just mentioned again, PERS is going up. PERS has gone up over $1.5 million a year for the last 6 years.
Oh,
that's what's killing us.
I understand
and
PERS
it's
is
going
wrong.
to continue
It's not
to do that.
We don't have control over PERS. I understand that, but
we
still.
don't have control over, you know, how much you can increase sales and property taxes. We have what our estimates are, and they aren't going to change much more than that next year. But we definitely have to look at where we're going to make those cuts on that. As soon as I finish talking, thank you. If you'll please address everything to me and wait. Thank you. So the motion is to bring back to us the expenditures of all departments, including police and fire, that are general fund only. We are not looking outside of general fund, so that we can look at each individual department and look where we might be able to cut other departments.
For clarification, there are going to be some programs that are split costs between general fund or multiple funds. We'll make sure we address all of those that are funded by the general fund in any way.
Can I ask?
Yes.
To what level of detail?
Enough so we can make decisions. So, I mean, obviously, I mean, I've gotten books before like this, so you can go through and go, how come the water from prior years isn't doing that? I've done that too. But I think we at least need to see the numbers on what that's spent on, and, you know, at a minimum, so that we can make the decision on prioritization. Because this is a prioritization exercise. You know, I mean, we could say, you know, some of the revenue enhancement stuff that you have here, like running around and trying to track down all the dogs for dog licenses stuff, you know. I don't know if you're going to get $200,000 from that. It's kind of hard for me to tell, you know, stuff like that. You know, and so, you know, I think there's some issues.
Well, they're not giving us that back. We're asking for the expenditures, and that figure came from what other cities are doing at our size. So we know roughly that's the figure.
So to clarify, we have, well, I guess
we
maybe I'll
need to know
clarify
the
after
amounts
the
and what it's spent
motion.
on. Yeah.
How about I clarify after?
Yeah.
I think we have enough direction, but is there any interest to look at any of the existing revenues or expenditures being presented tonight for consideration or not?
Yes, well, let's first vote on this, and then we'll go from there. You had a comment?
Just want to say, so this is not the only form by which we can get information. So I want to encourage anyone who needs more information to talk to staff and say, this is what I need, because we should be doing that constantly. This is we meet once every 2 weeks and more between then. If there's information that is necessary, don't wait for the council meeting. Don't wait for the next budget meeting. We have to get this, you know, we have to get through this. These are tough decisions. So talk to staff, get whatever you need, so that we can be prepared next time.
I mean,
Mr. Mayor, before we vote, now this isn't for the revenue enhancements. This is just for the motion.
This is, right, we will talk about the revenue enhancements afterward. So I urge all council members to go to staff if you don't have enough. It's incumbent on us, as well as incumbent on staff, to go to them and ask them specifically.
so I want to make it clear then that I can ask staff for any information I want, and I will get it, whether you guys want it or not. I want to make that clear. Is that what you're saying? Is that what you're saying, Mayor? Because in the past, we have not had that. In the past, we've always had to do stuff as a consensus in order to have staff do all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, I'm willing to accept that as long as it's very clear what you know, what we're authorizing here. Because in the past, we have not authorized council members to go and get all kinds of information that other people, they weren't getting.
I think when we're looking at this from a revenue standpoint, if you're asking for revenue dollars or expenditure dollars of what was spent last year, and what is looked at for this year, I mean, you've got to be reasonable. I'm not going to say everything. If you're going to get down into the nickels and dimes, no, that is not reasonable. That takes too much staff time. You know it, and I know it. I expect you to be reasonable.
Well, that's a mistake.
Since Mr. Spence spoke about the book of every line item, we will provide that with the detail. So the council, if they wish to go through each line item and have that opportunity, we'll make that available. So that way you can prioritize down to, you know, how much water we're paying for in the parks.
Well, sometimes, I use that example, but I'll tell you what happened. It was in West Covina Unified. They had, you know, 2 previous years' worth of actual expenditures, and they had what was budgeted. And, you know, you look at the 2 years before, and they spent 10,000 or whatever, and then, but they kept budgeting, you know, 50 grand, 50 grand, 50 grand across the board. And so, I mean, if we have that kind of stuff where we can see what was expended the prior couple of years, it's very useful, because sometimes, you know, over budgeting takes place.
May we have a roll call, please?
Johnson?
Aye.
Toma?
Aye.
Wu?
Aye.
Spence?
Aye.
Warshaw?
Aye. Motion passes 5-0. Now we will look at possible revenue enhancements. Councilman Johnson, you had comments or questions?
Yes, when we talk about charging our sports groups for using lighting, I can tell you right now, I'm not going to accept that. You know, our youth, they use a lot of sports, and one way to keep them off the street is through our sports. And we're talking about inside the gym, when they play the basketball at nighttime too, we're playing the softball, they're playing football. We have to do something if they're traveling teams that come in. I can see something like that, but our youth for West Covina that live here, I can't see charging them, and I won't accept that.
As far as I'm concerned on that, I would like to see what those actual lighting costs are per field, so that we know what it is and we have an idea of what those charges. Just to say 150,000, that just sounds off to me.
Let's get down to the nickel on that one.
Well, Community Services provided that detail this afternoon because I knew that question would come up, so we'll make sure that's part of the next packet too.
Okay.
But it works out to be about $20 per hour per field, and depends on how many hours per month each of the sports groups are using that field, or multiple fields.
You know, we had a speaker before talk about the technology of lighting, and, you know, I mean, is that something that's worth looking at, where, I mean, are the lights on when they don't need to be on, and that kind of stuff? Because you know, I've driven by lighted things that are on. I don't see anybody out there. I mean, when we schedule these things, you know, we should be able to schedule the lighting as well.
And we do, and, you know, sometimes the sports groups turn off at a certain time, other times they may not. Well, they are on timers, but they have the ability to bypass those in order so people can safely leave the parks at night too.
Okay, well, I think that's something worth looking at, to see if there's something
Absolutely.
there.
As far as the dog licensing, I am in favor of that. I think everyone who's got an animal should commit to having a license. That's the rule. And to canvass, I think, is a good thing. Most of us, I hope in the city, have our dogs licensed. We should, because if you lose them, it's a way to get them back. And I am definitely in favor of looking at going to canvassing for that. Does anyone else have any comments on any of the other items?
Well, I oppose the canvassing. I'm not going to send animal, you know, government employees door to door looking for dogs. I'm just not going to do that. Why don't we do it for vehicle fees? Why don't we do it for everything? You know, just send people door to door and start enforcement.
We
I'm not going to
do.
do that.
When you drive your car, and if
Well,
it's
you
not,
drive it, but if you don't drive it,
well,
we should
if
go
you
door to
have
door.
a dog,
We
it's
should
the
go door to
same
door and see
thing.
if they're all insured. I'm just not going to, I'm not going to do send government employees door to door looking for dogs.
Mr. Mayor, Council, do you want to go through each line item and give us direction? I think the Athens one, we don't have to worry about this time, but if you can go through the other ones, that would be beneficial.
Yeah, if you want to read them off in the amounts.
Certainly to approach the school districts and see if they are willing to do a shared cost 50-50 with crossing guards, the general fund savings of $90,000.
Comments?
Yeah, I mean, I think we should approach them. I mean, our crossing guards are great, but they benefit the schools. And so we should look into sharing those costs. I don't know if anyone feels different.
I would agree with that. I think you've got
Consensus. How about the sports group lighting? We'll bring back that details first. You want to see those?
I'd like to see details.
Sure.
Yeah, and I'd like to see, you know, it's helpful like that kind of rate, about $20 per hour per field, but if it can be broken down even further to get some sense of what kind of impact that will have. Are you talking about like the soccer fields and just baseball fields,
No,
or the kind of fields?
Baseball, soccer, and football. All sports
And
that
football,
utilize
right.
the fields.
Okay, and then to get some idea of like what the impact will be in the next year with that $150,000. I don't know if that can be figured out. I don't know if it's because the teams, number of teams
that
or
are
participants in the league,
right,
that kind of thing.
how much it would cost each participant?
It
based on
depends
that.
on how they handle, if it's done through fundraising or by participant. We have it broken down right now by each league and their winter or summer league. But if you want us to go down to participant, we'll do it based on, you know, the most recent numbers they submitted. Okay.
Yes.
Just get it down to the nickel. That's all I'm gonna do.
All right. street sweeping fee. That is to consider doing a new Prop 218 hearing, according to City Attorney, on the Athens bill to do a pass-through of the street sweeping fee here in West Covina. And that is a $491,000 general fund savings.
You have a consensus.
Okay. And then the dog license canvassing.
I'm in favor of doing it.
Yeah, I am too. They should be licensed.
Ma'am, I don't have a problem with it because years ago, they used to come around all the time. I know once a year they come around our house and they check and make sure if our dogs were licensed or not. And they'd want to show you that they were licensed. So I don't have a problem going back. We did it for years. I don't have a problem doing it again.
Mr. Mayor? Yeah, I think I'm okay too, because I have 2 dogs. They check on me every year, so every 2 years. So I'm fine.
2 years, you're supposed to pay every year. Those things need to come back, though, for council action, because, it wasn't clear when this was published that we're going to be talking about the Prop 218 hearing and the dog licensing and that kind of stuff
Well,
needs
and
to come
that's
back.
what we were asking
We're just getting
for.
guidance so we have an idea of how big the
What to
gap
bring
we still need to
back.
close
Okay,
is. All right, then on some of the expenditure cuts, I know we'll go back by department. Is there an interest to do a one-time, no payment to the vehicle replacement fund? We do have funds in there right now, and we're not anticipating buying any new vehicles really this year, so it's up to council.
I am not in favor of cutting all of it, because then we're just going to face it again the following year, and we buy vehicles every year. So I'm looking at possible cuts in it, but not a full cut.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I propose freeze everything right now.
Yeah, if we're not buying one.
This one's kind of timely, and that is the aquatics program. As you know, we've had some difficulties with the pool, and as of this week, the water is brown. They've been doing everything they can. I guess, of course, the power outage earlier this week and the corrosion in all the old pipes. So they're working to try and clear it up. But again, this is something we need to make a decision because we do have summer swim coming up as well as classes. They're filling those in the next couple of weeks.
Yes.
I'm for eliminating that.
I am too. So,
Well, I think we got to go further because even if we eliminate all that, we are on the hook for half of the maintenance costs of the pool.
And part of that is going to be working to come out of that contract as
So
well.
if we're not going to be using the pool, but the city has an agreement with the school district.
and the school
about
district
that
still
maintenance
owes
of-
us money, I think, on that.
We'll be
So
talking to the school
we need to
district because
look
they
at
also
that.
need to, the termination clause in the contract says you're supposed to give 90 days notice prior to July 1st. They're looking to terminate the contract maybe earlier because they want to start construction right after the first of the year on the new aquatic center. So hopefully they're willing to give and take on this one.
Any other items?
Special events?
Gone,
Okay.
as far as I'm concerned.
Do we have a breakdown by chance on this one? I think Serena has that.
I do think that, because a dollar amount, depending on what they are, there may be people in the community that want to sponsor them.
And I
stuff like
apologize,
that.
you're
So,
absolutely
yeah,
right. The idea is to eliminate them unless sponsored, yes.
Maybe somebody wants to do our celebration of eggs or something like that.
And as we come back to you at the next budget meeting, we'll also have some idea of the balance in the Community Services Foundation in case there's funds in there that you wish to use for some of the offsetting of the general fund too. The elimination of non-essential training and travel budgets.
And I just wanted to add to that, people think that this council hasn't made any cuts. So I do recommend people go on California Transparency. So I looked at 2013 compared to 2015. We came on, a little more than half this council came on December of 2013. And since then, between 2013 and 2015, we cut $78,557,000 from our city manager costs. We cut a little over $42,000 out of city council's costs. We cut a little over 17,000 out of the assistant city clerk. We cut 45,000 out of our public works director. So overall, in about 8 different areas, we cut about $173,000. And we're looking to cut more. So cuts have been done.
Mr. Mayor, I just want to clarify for the rest of the council, this is the mayor doing his own homework. That was something the staff provided just him and only him. So it's him doing his own homework. Cut commission treasurer budgets.
Yes.
Can I just get a sense of scale? I think I'm for it, but what does that mean to 6875? Like out of what, or what's the?
That's the full budgets. They right now get a small stipend to go, not stipend, they get the stipend to serve on the commission. These are their expenditure accounts to attend community events that we will reimburse them for. They have a small budget for that, to pay for like polo shirts, ID badges, those type of things for them as well. Cut city council allowances to 1,500,
Yes, and what are they currently?
4,700.
Right. Right.
All right, I know we talked about public safety, but eliminate the vacant position in the finance department, the account clerk position,
Yes.
and the planning associate position. And we'll skip over police officers. Downgrade fire marshal to fire protection specialist.
Yes.
I don't know what that entails.
So currently, we have a deputy fire marshal position in the fire department that has not been filled. It's been underfilled with a couple of part-time positions. Since the fire department did not need to fill them this year, the idea is to downgrade the position, that full-time position, because we're definitely going to need a fire inspector in the future event, but right now we're underfilling that with part-time staff
I guess.
at a lower level.
I still don't know what that means. Tell me what the difference is between what the deputy fire marshal does and what the fire protection specialist.
I can ask the fire chief to come down real quick. Larry?
Good evening, Mayor, Council, City staff. The difference between the fire marshal and inspector or the deputy fire marshal? Fire protection specialist is entry level, does initial fire inspections. Deputy fire marshal does more in depth and a supervisory position as well with plan checking. General fire inspectors don't do plan checking.
We currently consult out the plan checks with, yes, we do, for those inspections.
Okay, so is the 71,000 just the reduction of those 2 positions, or because if we're paying a consultant to cover
No,
part of that too?
this is the net for the full-time
That's the net?
position.
Okay.
All right, thank you, Chief.
So this is temporarily, right? Just.
This is for this year,
For this
unless
year.
additional funds come back and council wishes to revisit anything, yes.
Okay.
Downgrade the deputy city clerk position, which is vacant at this time, to 2 part-time positions. That generates a savings of $50,000.
I'm in favor of it. Consensus.
And there is an interest or not at this time to talk about the school resource officers.
I mean, I think that's actually, that's an issue where half of it's being paid by somebody else. So I mean, it makes it kind of hard to see how, we eliminate that when someone is paying.
I think we need to look
We'll bring
at
that one back
the rest
then.
of the count, right, before we start eliminating anything from police.
Any discussion on the CIP as presented? This we're not adopting, but is there any comments or questions about that? Because I did want to add something about Shadow Oak Park from last night.
Are you talking about attachment number 2?
Yeah,
Right there. Well, I think, weren't you going to get us a list of what CIP projects? There were 2 that were funded from the general fund, right?
They are on page,
When I asked that, right? That you said
they're
there
on
were 2?
attachment number 2, on the front page there of attachment number 2. It says capital projects, Fund 160. Unfortunately, we do need to put in 50,000 or so a year for the NPDES measures to show that we're doing something, and those can't be funded with any other funding but general fund. On the attachment number 2 of the staff report. And the other item is replacement of the fire department's self-contained breathing apparatus masks. They're $80,000. Apparently, the state has changed the requirements on those masks, and so we need to buy new ones in order to be compliant with state law.
I have no problem with either of those. Those are both needed or required. Otherwise, on the MS4, we're facing fines if we don't do it, which would cost us much more, and we need to protect our firefighters. So we need to do both of those.
That does bring up a question, though, is what is the estimate that the state owes us for state mandates that they're supposed to fund?
The unfunded mandates,
Yeah,
they haven't paid us in
the
how many
state has
years?
an unfunded, yeah, I mean, they have unfunded mandates they put on us, but they're required by law to pay for it. So, I mean, do we have an amount on that? And
Rather than tie up stuff,
Yeah.
there is, and we can get that for you.
yeah, great, thank you.
And then it seems like every 5 years or so, they give us a little bit of what they owe us.
Right, exactly, yeah, so maybe we should try to get more of it.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor. I have a question for Krista. What is our total reserve fund right now? And not in percentage, but in dollars amount?
I'm sorry, our what?
What's the reserve dollar amount not included today?
Okay, based on the quarterly report from last night, our unassigned fund balance is actually at 5.8 million, which is only 9%. The budget, we're projecting it will be at 16.9% at the end of the fiscal year, because a lot of our revenue sources come in after we do accruals of 60 days, so we've spent more before we get it. It's just unfortunately how government is.
So we'll be about 16.9% of the 62 million? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
So we're about,
As opposed to the 20%, which is the reserve limit.
right.
I had another question on revenues that's not in here, and that is, how do we collect TOT on sharing services like Airbnb?
That's a gray area right now that is being discussed with the city attorney. Our code is very old, and so
Well,
we might have
because
to
I
do an
know there are
update.
cities that have made, arrangements with those kinds of services to get the TOT when they're rented out. And so if we're not collecting TOT from them, that's something that's already on the books that we should be doing.
Yes.
Mr. Mayor, regarding the TOT, I just want to follow, Mayor Pro Tem Spence, regarding TOT, we have about 5 hotel and a couple of, motel. I think we have quite a room, so that paying us the 10% on the TOT tax and billing us 100% to us. Okay, I want to make sure they don't show change us a dime. So have we ordered them to make sure they pay us?
Great question, and we get, how much per year from TOT? Is it 2 million? No, it's more than that. I know, we're asking her a bunch of questions, apologize. But with regards to the audit of them, I try to remember if you've authorized that recently or we're in the process of bringing that to you.
The TOT is about 1.8 million, and they are in the process of auditing all of the hotels right now.
And how soon we can have them be audited?
I think we may have results by June or July, and the plan is to provide it weekly so that you have the information when they provide their summary report.
And how many percent we keep? We have a 10%, right? 10, 12%?
Yes.
So we keep 100% of those money, right?
Yes.
So we'll make sure they pay us.
Yes.
I think there is an issue on collecting the TOT from hotels where they, depending if it's like a hotels.com thing or something like that, the third-party broker on how the TOT is collected, because sometimes cities don't get what they should be getting because of the broker issue. There's some kind of issue there. I remember that they are supposed to be giving us the higher amount according to law, but they don't give us the higher amount of what the room is. They try to give the discounted rate.
Yeah, I think you're looking at when they, like if you use Priceline or something like that, the percentage that goes to Priceline, some of them haven't been paying that. I don't know if that happens in our city, but I know.
But also, they sell the
that's
room
been
for
a problem.
$29 to Priceline, right? So then they try to
Right.
give us 10% of the 29 instead of the 50 that was paid for on, on Priceline. So I know that's an issue too. But I do think if we're not collecting from sharing services like Airbnb, that to me, that's clear, that's something that we should already be doing.
I have information on the state mandates. I just got our email recently. They submitted, our consultant submitted about 28,000 in reimbursements for 17-18, but there is 1.5 plus million outstanding that does not include accrued interest with the state controller's office. So it just depends on when they decide to pay them.
And just for the public's benefit, how that works is we submit to the state reimbursement for reimbursable services, and it's up to the state legislature to pay those. Many times they'll adopt their budget or a measure and say, we're not going to pay the mandated reimbursables this year. And so we wait and see what portion they may pay each year when they get to us.
Would you like me to list the special events that make up the 31,000? There's an Arbor Earth Day, breakfast with Santa, dive-in pool movie, egg celebration, Halloween at Gulfster Park, Memorial Day event, Martin Luther King event, Dog Spooktacular, Veterans Day, and Community Service Volunteer Day. That makes up the 31,000 in the proposed cuts.
So that's the net though, right?
Yes.
That's a net because sometimes we get revenue. Yeah, so that's the net.
And again, there's still some funds in the Community Services Foundation that you may want to use for those events. For example, there's still some money outside of the funds for improvements to the memorial wall that could be used maybe for Veterans or Memorial Day events in the future, if the council wishes.
Go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, with regards to Shadow Oak Park, I know that was a hot topic last evening. One of the things we're waiting upon as well that may help bring it back sooner is depending on the final completion cost for the soccer complex. While we don't anticipate a whole lot coming back, if it does, that may generate the additional money to be able to bring the restroom project back to the City Council within the next 6 months or so. So we'll try and bring that sooner if we can.
Great, thank you. Are there any other questions or comments from council? Mr. City Manager, do you have any other comments?
No, I just want to say that I know while having a deficit is not something fun that for staff or the City Council or for the public, what's important is that the organizations stick together to help get through this. And I need the City Council's support because the last thing we want to do is create any kind of chaos or frenzy here in this organization where you're going to see good people leave the organization. In the last few years, or I would say the last couple of years especially, that we've made some significant changes in the organization for the better. And this organization has come a long way since before you folks were on the City Council. And that was one of the reasons I think that you're up here on this City Council is the community wanted that change. The staff and I am committed to help you continue that mission. And if you have further changes you wish to do, we're here to support you and make those changes. We just ask for the same support. Thank you.
Thank you. And with that, this meeting is adjourned.